Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to a view replay featuring the Kranvagn as driven by Zloey here. This isn't a machine I have myself, and I don't think I've featured it much either, but for those unaware, it is one of the few tier 10 autoloaders, although of course there are now more than there used to be. And although the DPM isn't very good compared to the rest of the tier 10 autoloaders, in fact it's just a bit on the low side generally, it sort of makes up for that by having fairly amazing turret armour. And it's not just the raw value of that armour, which is pretty good, it's over 220mm thick, but also the sloping. And you combine that with, I believe it's 10 degrees of gun depression, then when you're hull down, making full use of that gun depression, there are quite a few tier 10 premium rounds that can't touch you. So although the DPM isn't great, although you do heavily rely on that burst of damage and then have to heavily rely on your teammates whilst you're reloading, unlike the 50B and the T57 Heavy, if you can get into a good hull down position, it is basically gravy. It's also a fairly low profile machine. It's not a, well, low profile is not the right phrase exactly, but it's not a big heavy tank, and so I imagine it has a better camo value than most of the other tier 10 heavies, although I haven't actually checked that out, but it would make sense. The camo values are generally tied to the actual sizes of vehicles. So Zloey so far has managed a fairly successful first clip, 1200 damage done, 3 out of 4 shots, and punished that enemy object 140 fairly hard. And well, if they can get another shot off at the 100, but nope. Slightly poor trigger discipline there. That was a bit of a risky shot to take. You can't afford to waste too many shells when you've got an autoloader like this, but they've still got 2 in the clip, so if something else pops up they can hopefully give it a nasty smacking. The game overall is not looking too bad so far. Zloey is obviously wanting to stick around this area for now, because if they can stay hull down and use that gun depression, that absolutely puts them in their element in this tank. And although the rest of the tank is not so good armour wise, the mobility is certainly decent on this. It's, I don't know how it compares with the 50B exactly, but it's not a slow machine. So if and when the team advances, you know, if presuming that this is going to be a win of course, then Zloey will easily be able to keep up. So they've gone for the reload. They didn't have much to shoot at, so it seemed the sensible thing to do. They're now back up to their full clip potential, and well, if they can have a little peek, maybe spot something, that might be quite good, although they're partly relying on other people's spotting as well. I don't think the view range is anything special on this. Some of the tier 10 heavies do have a decent view range, but others, well, I mean, having said that, you know, it's still probably like 390. View ranges at the top tier tend to be within, what, 20 meters of each other? I think the best of them is around 410, and a lot of them are 390. So it's still quite good view range, objectively speaking. It's just not the best it can be at this tier. In terms of numbers, they're actually slightly behind the enemy team, but Zloey decides to make a slightly more aggressive move here, because this T62A does seem to be isolated, and although they just wasted a shell in the side armour, they're able to make the final shot count and get the kill with the assistance of that Super Conqueror. So, up to 2700 damage done, and the first kill they've managed as well. Their team does seem to be doing quite well overall, although it's, having said that, maybe it's a little early to call, but they do seem to be more in control. They do seem to be more going on the offensive, whereas the enemy team is still very much in a defensive mode, just glancing at the minimap, seeing where everybody is and seeing how the remaining enemy tanks are actually behaving. There are some nasty enemy tank destroyers to still be wary of, however, and of course there's artillery as well to worry about, so Zloey has to be a little bit careful. And hit point wise, this is on the low end for the tier. 2,000 hit points isn't a huge amount for a tier 10 heavy tank. Although, having said that, I think some of them are like only 100, 200 above that. So it's like maybe an extra hit. And when it comes to tier 10 tank destroyer alpha, it, practically speaking, isn't going to make that much of a difference. So with a bit more movement going on, Zloey takes the opportunity to move up and use the bushes, use the gun depression to unload their clip at this rather unfortunate IS-7, who, if they can get the final shot, there we go, is another kill. They do seem to be basically winning at this point. The enemy team is scattered, what's left of them. There's a couple of tank destroyers. Zloey's allies are mobbing that Object 140 on the 0 line, and so long as Zloey doesn't blunder into a 183 shell at the same time as, say, an E3 shell or an FE shell, then it should be fine. And as it happens, they do get hit by the 183, but they're firing just regular HE. And so, although it does 600 damage, it's still a big HE shell. It's not really enough to give Zloey any real difficulty, especially considering they were on full health. Now that could have been nasty. I don't know if that was just a lucky guess by the T-92, but if the 183 had hit Zloey sideways whilst showing side armour of the very squashy hull, yeah, that, even with an HE shell, would have taken a lot of their remaining health. But it was just artillery, and it might just have been a lucky guess, or it might just have been an educated guess. You know, it might not have been lucky at all. They might have seen where Zloey was going and decided they'd have a go at that location. But it was only, in the scheme of things, a little bit of health, and so Zloey has just been able to move up along with the rest of the team, and with the auto-loader is able to get the final kill. So a rather cautiously played game, nothing spectacular, but it was solid, and along with the rest of the team pushing forward and overcoming the enemy team, Zloey was able to significantly contribute to this victory. Although I was a little surprised to see that this was not in fact an ace tanker. This might be a competitive tank, I don't know, but 5,700 damage done puts them second place, and it's actually the most damage done on the team. The Super Conqueror did very well as well, but perhaps because they were using spotting from their allies a lot, and perhaps because they were firing from longer ranges, although they actually were within 300 meters of everything that they hit. But yeah, if other people were spotting for them, that does impact the amount of XP that you get. But it was a solid game, and it showed the strengths of the tank being used to their best advantage. That was certainly a very respectable amount of damage for a tier 10 heavy. So that's it for this replay. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.